Here we are, May 11th, 2023, about 9:07 p.m. And the Pac-12 Conference still does not have a TV deal. The clock is ticking. Why is it taking the Pac-12 such a long time to get a deal done? Why is it such a struggle? And why is the Big 12 why does the Big 12 seem to be trending in the right direction while the Pac-12 seems to be trending in the wrong direction? And to talk about this today, I've brought on a special guest. He's a BYU fan. Uh, I'll call him a statistician, but his name is Jeff Fuller, and I'm gonna bring him on. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing great, Couz. Thanks for having me. Great to be here. I love numbers. I don't think I could claim to be a statistician by a profession, but
Right.
I've always loved numbers and digging into them, and think I understand them all right.
Right. Yeah. Maybe he may not be a quote unquote professional statistician, but he could be if he wanted to. Put it that way. But no, he's put out a lot of interesting data as of late, and I really found it in an article he did with Ben Criddle with ESPN 960 over in Provo, Utah. Jeff, you want to just give us a brief overview of what you did there with Ben?
Yeah. So Ben's a great guy, a former BYU player, and I was been a fan of his as a player back several years ago. And he just has watched some of the stuff I've been sort of sharing on mainly Twitter and on Cougar Board about just sort of writing up, looking at brand value of different schools around the nation, just sort of looking at fan bases, looking at TV ratings, looking at, social media interactions and penetration and all those things. And you sort of get sucked in as a fan, and especially as a BYU fan, realignment, we've always been up for consideration, but never sort of invited to the party until late, even though we've felt that we're sort of Power 5 level fan base and football history and program, just never due to cultural fit issues in our geographic region, never were invited to the Pac-12. And so there's sort of maybe a little chip on my shoulder and on most BYU fans' shoulder,
Right.
about
Understandable.
About never getting invited, always being told, you're not the right fit, you don't do enough research, have other cultural fit issues, and just didn't seem to make sense of why that a lot of those things should matter for sports. Love football, got a great, one of the biggest stadiums in the West and great fan base, and just sort of so built up, had always looked at the data. So I initially came at it as a fan and from a BYU slant, just saying, hey, look at us. We are a strong brand. Have a lot of fans. We bring a lot of value TV wise, relevance wise. And so Ben's reached out. He's had me on his show a couple times, just radio call in, and just had me as an invited guest a few times. And he had me in studio and was a co-host for one of the hours of his show. And just just digging into these numbers and really looking at, like I said, you're sucked into these realignment discussions and all the sort of drama. It's almost like this is a soap opera for sports dudes, looking at this whole realignment and Pac-12, Big 12 media deal issues. So,
yeah. Well, it was a very interesting piece and a lot of numbers, really too much for me to digest at one time. I had to kind of go back and read it again a second time to kind of digest it all.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring you on here because I think these numbers really shed a light on a lot of things and answer some questions that Pac-12 and Big 12 fans might have as to why each conference is where they are. And I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet that you used or that you put together with this data. Just walk us through these, Jeff, if you don't mind.
Sure. And again, this my Twitter is sort of listed there by my name. The sort of pinned tweet at my Twitter does have a link to this article. I know you'll probably share a link through Twitter or on the in the notes here. But it is long. It is a lot of information. It was released in installments, and we actually have 2 or 3 more coming. I do have a co-author who's anonymous. He's actually probably better with numbers than I am, but we do have a couple more that are focused on like attendance at sporting events, that are looking at social media interactions and followers, just sort of comparing the two conferences there. And that's sort of the whole thing is, hey, the Big 12 sort of got at this quick and sort of, yes, they re-upped to sort of hit the reset button on a current deal. But, I think I think the Pac-12, Pac-10 now, probably thinks that they probably should have done the same thing when they had the chance. Apparently they had the chance to sort of re-up with ESPN, and they look, I don't know whether it's, they just felt, they saw what the Big 10 just got, and they had these, big eyes and think, oh, that's our sister conference, the Big 10. We should be getting that kind of money. And not really understanding the metrics and the numbers and sort of their geographical limitations. And they're, in general, less involved, less passionate fan bases. And so looking at this first graph here, this is actually a 3-year running average of the actual payouts that have come. So the 2016 number is 2014, 15, and 16 sort of averaged, and then going on all the way to 2021. And you do see, the Pac-12 there, it's coming up in green here for me. You see that downward trajectory towards the end. So this is what's already actually happening. The money that they're paying out to their teams is, on the wrong path. No question about it. And you do see that the Big 10 is the other, they're at the top here, but they started to trend in the other direction. And those are the two conferences that maybe were the most reactionary to the COVID-19 and initially canceled their seasons. I think the Pac-12 had the fewest games, but that's part of why the trend was downward there. But again, you look at the other conferences and they're either trending up or at least flat. Big 12 there is right there in the middle. Again, that's with Texas and Oklahoma there. So that does, with those brands going away, that there was a concern that number might go down. Fortunately, it's looking like it's probably not, as we've seen. But you look at the Pac-12, those numbers right there are with USC and UCLA. A lot of it is because of the Pac-12 network and the, bad financial management of their previous commissioner, which, you got to at least partially blame on their presidents, because commissioners exist just to do the will of the presidents. So
correct. Yeah, good point.
So if the next slide there, now this is from Navigate. They published this after Texas and Oklahoma announced they were going to the SEC, but before USC and UCLA announced they were going to the Big 10. And so they published these, and it was in The Athletic, and a big article. I think it was Auerbach and Olson or Mandel and whatever, some combination of those folks at The Athletic. And you see in the middle of the graph, so 2025 to 2026, you see there's sort of a big jump for everyone. And that's because they assumed, as it says there in the subtitle up there, they assumed a 12-team college football expansion. So again, this is before this was announced. They said, assuming this is what happens, this is what's going to happen to payouts for everyone. And so you see a big boost there. There's a lot of money to be made in the college football playoff for all the teams, all the conferences, especially the Power Five. And this is what Navigate projected. But once the Pac, and you see sort of those three conferences there, the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big 12 sort of trend pretty close, not a whole lot of difference between them there. To start with, I guess you could say the Big 12 has the lowest growth, but again, that's with losing Texas and Oklahoma. And even still, with losing them, it sort of corresponded with the time that the extra playoff money would come. And so it jumped up still in 2026, but not nearly as much as the other conferences because of the loss of Texas and Oklahoma. Also, this assumed that Texas and Oklahoma were going in 2025. Instead of 2024, which was so again, maybe shift some of those numbers around. But I looked at these numbers. That's interesting. And then I saw the reports saying, USC, UCLA are leaving their 40 to 50% of the media value of the Pac-12 just themselves, those two schools with the LA market, the huge, massive LA market, number two in the nation. And So I'm like, wow, let's readjust these numbers. Now these numbers are not just the media contract. These are all income. That the
Right.
previous slide was that, and this slide is that, and the next slide, we can jump to that. I sort of calculated things by moving, USC and UCLA to the Big Ten. And again, this reworking was before UCLA and before Oklahoma and Texas announced they were leaving in 2024. This was still based on the 2025 numbers, but you can see the Pac-12 there at the bottom.
Right.
They definitely are dropping with the loss of USC and UCLA. And some people have criticized. I came out with this almost a year ago, and some people criticize saying, "Oh, you're not giving them enough credit. They're going to get a lot of monies from the bowls and the playoffs and the NCAA credits from the men's tournament." But even still, I did a revision of my original numbers. I had a little math there in my original numbers that freaked a lot of people out, but I did do a recorrection and posted it on Twitter. And looks like okay. Yeah, just essentially, the Pac-12, they do trend up eventually, and it's not a big, huge difference between the two. But again, that's assuming USC and UCLA stay. And again, they do stay the lowest, the weakest of the conferences, and that's not. I know it looks like they're right there together, but if you look at those actual numbers, yes, we do see a huge Super Two among the Power Five. Those numbers are way up in the hundreds of millions per year per team. Right. Per year payout, whereas you got 61 million for the ACC, close to 60 million, about 58 for the Big 12, but down at 49, below 50 million for the Pac-12.
Pac, yeah.
So
okay,
that's without adding anyone and without anyone bolting, obviously.
Right. So that puts obviously the Pac-12 definitely at the bottom of the pack in payout, and then you've got,
as they are right now. I mean, I'm not projecting anything, and that they're at the bottom with USC and UCLA.
Right.
I don't know why people freaked out saying these numbers were way too low, because it's just fans being fans, I guess. They're already at the bottom, and they're going to stay there. Even if they all stick together, and even if they add some other schools, they're going to stay there.
Now, does this number for the ACC, does this ACC number include the ACC network?
It does, yes. These are payouts from all things.
Got it.
And this was actually, I think, projecting that the Big 12, this is before the Big 12 announced the deal. We might need to project them up a little higher based on the actual numbers that they got.
Right.
But I think the projected payout for the whole time was about 50 million. If you look from the 2025 to 2030, it does average about 50 million. So I think it, I think we hit pretty spot on, or Navigate hit spot on. I didn't change Navigate's numbers for anyone but the Pac-12 and the Big Ten with the move of USC and UCLA. So they hit right on those numbers. And I think the numbers I switched for those conferences are going to end up pretty close as well.
Right. I think so too. I mean, it's like you said, it still averages out to about 50 million a year for the Big 12, which is what the conference is projecting they will make. So I think that's, pretty accurate to me. But like I said, I mean, it's all projections.